Okay, so we have a bit of a shorter tutorial here, and we're going to continue doing our detailing of the helmet. So we just want to start off here by adjusting some of the topology at the side of the helmet, as we're going to make a little cutout just before the ventilation tubes. Throughout the duration of this tutorial, we're also going to be modelling a little ventilation shaft, or at least I believe that's what it is, at the side of the helmet. We're also going to go ahead and do the 3 indents on the sun brim underneath the helmet, and then do some extra detailing at the back of the helmet, doing some additional insets and inward extrusions to the top back helmet, and adding in a little detail to which I have no idea what it is at the very back of the helmet, but it is a detail nonetheless. The cuts we're making here with the knife tool are going to set the bounds for where we are going to make this cutout on the side of the helmet here. It's actually a little bit too far back on the y-axis for my liking, but once we actually make the cutout, we can properly see how it looks on the helmet, and then we can go ahead and adjust how far back it sits in the design. So learning from my previous mistakes using Alt-S to model the previous details, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this section that we've masked out, and then go ahead and start to extrude out some of the edges and then fill in the rest of the faces. This way there's just going to be less inconsistency with the straightness of the edges and all of the corners. So now that we have the detail cut in, we can go ahead and adjust it, as it's easier to eyeball the detail now. You'll also notice that the edge we're lining it up with isn't perfectly straight along the z-axis, so we can just make some modifications to the bottom and middle vertices just so that it better aligns with the far left edge. So for this part here, we just want to go ahead, select these back 6 faces, put the cursor to our selection, and then we can go ahead and bring in a plane. Now for the model that I have set up, I found that scaling this down to be around 0.07, then doing a rotation at -22 degrees around the x-axis got me the right direction and size for this plane. I then go ahead and drag back this edge about 0.075, I believe it is, and then I do one extra additional rotation on the normal Y about 0.63, I believe it is. That just worked for my model in particular. I had to take about 3 attempts at this. Despite it being a relatively easy object to model, I just found that the angle that we were trying to model it on was a little bit difficult, as I just think the way I've modeled this, it's got a bit of a curve to it, so not everything is actually perfectly straight, and we model a perfectly straight model on top of it, so you get some discrepancy. The loop cut that we're putting in right now, we want to have it align with the back white edge of the helmet. Once we have that in, we can rotate it so that it's pivoting around the center point and more closely aligned with the angles of the helmet. Once we have that, we want to go ahead and bevel these 3 cuts here so that we get the 3 slats of details that we need. And then we want to go ahead and apply bevels to the corners here. However, we need to go ahead and apply the scale of this object, otherwise we will get some weird beveled results. Just a note, as we do this edge slide here, we might end up with a double up of the edges. I'll show you this in just a second, but once we go ahead and do the by distance here, I get rid of these faces and I actually end up with the edge that was connected to those faces still existing along this edge here. So you'll notice I tried to delete an edge, it was the wrong one, but there's this faint edge that just still exists. So that might also happen for you guys on your end. Just make sure you check for that. You'll definitely be able to notice it if you go ahead and fill in these faces here. You'll get some really weird shading on the normals. So just keep your eye out for that, as it more than likely will occur on your end as well. Finally, we just want to go ahead and connect up the 2 sides of the insets that we've done here. We just need to adjust these, as at the moment we've got rather harsh edges at the very back here. We also want to do the same for the front in just a moment, so we'll slide up the edges at the base of the inset up a bit and then use J to connect them across the entire length of this model. For whatever reason, this part of the modeling actually took me a while to figure out. So the insets we're doing here, I believe they sit around 0.2 to 0.25 for the inset. And we want to make sure that for the first inset we're doing, it's across 2 faces, and then the second 2 are across 3 faces. Then once we've done this, it's not all actually perfectly aligned as of just yet, so we need to do some additional edge slides, relax, and space operations along all these, just so that we get the right design, and I'll show you where we do all of those. Doing the extra insets on the insets we've already done, we can do these first 2 parts together, but we want to leave the third inset to a separate one, just as the area that we are going to do the inset on is a little bit smaller and it doesn't quite conform to the exact same scale that we use for the other 2. So we have some rather janky topology at the bottom of the sun visor here, but it's not of a massive concern because it exists on a perfectly flat surface, so it's not going to show strange deforms or give us annoying pinching in the subdivision surface since it is on that flat surface. So that's where we can actually get away with something like this. Okay, so we've managed to add a significant amount of detail to the helmet in this tutorial, so you guys should be happy with the way it's looking at the moment, as we have a lot of the major forms of detail done. We've still got a little bit more to go as far as the interior parts of the helmet are concerned, but we can get around to that in the coming episodes. But for the most part, we've got really nice major forms of detail and a couple of minor forms of detail as well. We have some pinching that you can see in this area, though we're going to go ahead and fix that in the tutorials to come. You could actually even fix it before we get there. Mainly what you want to be doing is doing edge slides along those edges that are raised up, and then using C and just continue to push it into the mesh. Same applies for the outside edges of where we've put those 2 additional insets in, as I actually end up with more pinching than I was looking for in my final render, which I didn't notice until it was pointed out to me. So just do some additional edge slides, push in the edges and vertices up and down until you get rid of most of the pinching. Use that really harsh red matte cap. I think that's something I neglected to do, and just try to alleviate the pinching best you can. Anyway, we are very, very close to the end of this tutorial series. I believe we only have another 4 episodes to go, and by that stage we will have our final and completed Mark 6 Gen 3 model. So in saying that, I shall see you guys in the next tutorial.